Chairman Jackson, you called the meeting to order at 9:04 a.m.
Yes.
Thank you. And now roll call.
Board Member Bays.
Here.
Blair.
Here.
Duvall.
Here.
And Jackson.
Here. Okay. Public comments, for a total of 15 minutes is provided so members of the public may address the board on items that are listed on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. If you desire to speak to the board about an item that's not on the agenda, a request to speak form may be filled out and filed with the board secretary. Once the speaker is called, please state your name for the record. And for all other agenda items, request to speak forms may be filled out with the board secretary prior to the board addressing that item. On these items, each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Okay, the first thing is the consent calendar.
Well, before we go on, I did receive via email a comment. So this is not an agendized item. This is just a comment to be read into the record. So we're not responding to this, but as requested by this person, we need to read this in the record. So this was John Randall III, and he says, I would like the following comment / question entered into public record on the next Old Town Local Review Board meeting. My wife, son, and I have lived in Temecula for the past 35 years. Yes, before Temecula became the city. One of the draws to Temecula area was Old Town with its Main Street decor, quaint shops, and historical nod to earlier times, which takes us to Butterfield Square. This site recalls the nostalgia of Santa Claus, parentheses, Bob Taylor, and his assistant, Bea Taylor. The annual trek for Christmas pictures taken inside the Chocolate Florist and the numerous visits to the jewelry store across the parking lot. That all changed with the demolition of Butterfield Square and the intended development of the 150-room Truax Hotel. Since the August 16, 2019 groundbreaking ceremony, the land has sat idle. The Truax Hotel has not been built. The September 2021 project completion date will not be met. The site is an eyesore to all who visit Temecula. My question, writes Mr. Randall, when will the construction begin for the new Truax Hotel, or when will the city of Temecula renegotiate the lot for the betterment of the community? Signed, John A. Randall III. That concludes the public comments that were received.
Okay, then. And you said we're not going to respond.
It was just to be read into the record. It's not an agendized item for discussion.
Okay, consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no discussion on these items unless members of the Old Town Local Review Board request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Item number 1, approve the minutes from June 14th, 2021. That's it.
Do we have a motion?
I have a motion to approve those minutes. I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion in second by Blair. And
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
okay,
Motion passes 4-0.
thank you. Okay. Business items. Creek Walk Creative Plan presented by Temecula Valley. Recommendation that the board receives and files a presentation. Number 3 is a presentation on parking space availability signs. Again, recommendation to receive and file presentation.
On business item number 2, we have a visit to Temecula Valley here to present. We have a presentation to present. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that Creek Walk Creative Plan?
John.
Okay.
Have some copies.
All right, so
The board
are we
members.
spreading this out?
Sorry, we don't probably have enough copies. We didn't realize how many.
That's okay, we can share.
Can I just task you guys with go ahead and sending this out while I do that? My name is John Kelleher, and I serve on the board for Visit Temecula Valley. We are their organization that promotes Temecula as a great destination for the visitor to come spend their money. We also are very concerned with sustainability and tying in the visitor experience with the local experience so that tourism doesn't become a hassle for the locals, but rather it continues to enhance our community by making things better. Along those lines, there is an idea that many folks, both local and within the tourism community, have had, and that is to do something with the creek that runs through Old Town Temecula and other parts of Temecula. And that's something, this is sort of a conceptual idea as you look through the presentation that was put together. But the something can be one of many, many things. And what I want to do now is draw your attention to 3 different examples that a lot of people will be probably familiar with. If you think about the San Antonio Riverwalk, San Antonio is not a particularly big city. There's much bigger cities in Texas. But San Antonio really is thought of as a place that has a high level of lifestyle benefits. And a real beautiful amenity is the Riverwalk. That Riverwalk is actually a canal system that was created well over 100 years ago and is transformed into a place with retail and restaurants and bars, and is a gathering place not just for San Antonio, but for people throughout the world who come to San Antonio and find it to be a very beautiful and attractive amenity. We're not suggesting that we do a San Antonio Riverwalk, but it's an example of how that specific community has something that has become a great amenity and a source of pride for the people in San Antonio. Another example that I'm very familiar with, I went to Arizona State University and I knew the mayor at the time, his name was Neil Giuliano. Tempe, Arizona has the Salt River running through. It's a riverbed that's dry 99.9% of the time. It's about 10 times wider than our little river that runs through our old town. But they had this idea and they actually implemented it. It was crazy. It took 17 different governmental organizations to come together, including as diverse as the Army Corps of Engineers, several different municipalities, counties, state, federal. They all had to come together and work on this project. And again, I'm not suggesting that we do this, but they created an inflatable dam. And they created a thing called the Tempe Town Lake. Over $1 billion of investment has come from the time that they created the Tempe Town Lake. If you go there now, it's actually a lake where you can go out with sailboats. You can have swimming events. There's high rises spread across with loft apartments looking over the lake and people picnicking and restauranting around this lake in the middle of the desert. And what they do is they dam it up and let the water come in. They put a dam on the backside, pump it in, and they manage to keep water into that Tempe Town Lake. Again, it's something that's just for consideration that if you have an amenity that's a waterway, you can do something with it. Not necessarily that's what we want to do, although some people have suggested that. And then the final example, which I think is probably the closest to what we have here in Temecula, in San Luis Obispo. And I want to ask, has anyone been to San Luis Obispo? So have you seen their little river walk area, the little creek walk area? So San Luis Obispo had a creek running through the center of town. All the businesses faced away from the creek because it was a place where there was trash. It was an erosion issue. It was basically an eyesore. And a public-private group came together with the dream, sort of like a lot of the people in Temecula have. And they said, let's turn this into an amenity. It's got trees down there. It winds right through the center of town. And they cleaned the place up. They put amenities down there. In this case, it was paved walkways and little gathering areas along the side of the creek and going up the banks. And what happened over the next 5 to 10 years is that the restaurants began to turn around and they built patios overlooking the area, and people gather there and they take their walks down there and they take dogs down there. So the idea of the creek walk is not a specific idea in my mind, although a lot of people do have a specific idea. But we're hoping this group and other groups can get behind is this idea. Let's take a look at what we've got and let's get a public-private partnership together and let's start the process of brainstorming and planning and committee and make the creek that runs through Old Town Temecula something that the businesses, instead of facing Front Street, which we will continue to do, just like they do in San Luis Obispo, will have another option that allows people to want to walk down the creek side. We do have what I'll call a functional creek walk now. I'm sure you're all familiar with the passageway that's essentially sort of binds to waves is kind of the general idea that we'll have a connector that runs along the creek. And that has begun to be implemented, but it's very functional. And it's not something that's going to attract visitors. It's not something that's going to attract the locals. It's not going to be something that's a source of pride. It's a source of transport for folks that, like myself, who like to ride a bike and want to go far, which is great, but we want to see it do more than that. So really our purpose today is just to get in front of you and say, this is something that a lot of people have been thinking about. I'm guessing, and I know some of the folks in this room, I'm guessing that some of the folks in this room have been thinking about this and have heard about it or even talked about it as something that they'd like to move forward. And we encourage you to look through the presentation. This is just a conceptual presentation. It's not our idea of this is what has to happen, but it just shows kind of some ideas of what could happen and where we would like to see that, which is essentially this one. And I'm going to turn to Lee and say, did I miss anything as far as, because I'm just kind of going off the cuff here. This is something I've been dreaming about for a long time. So
No, I think our goal at Visit Temecula Valley is to have this as part of the new master plan, so that, because we know you wonderful city people love a document that says this is what we're going to do next. So our hope is that you'll incorporate this into that master plan for something that then will get budget money, we'll get, because we know that that's how it works. We've learned, 15 years that you've all taught us. So that's kind of our hope in all of this, is to give you a dream, you to put it in the master plan, and then get behind it with money and resources and so forth.
And Julie No is here representing Old Town, and you're currently the president of the Old Town Association, right, Julie?
I am.
Okay. So, and is there anything that you want to say? I mean, part of the thing we wanted to give you the idea of is that there's wide community support for it.
There
So I wanted to say,
And when we first met with the VTV and sat down and we saw this conceptual idea, because they wanted to see how maybe merchants and restaurateurs would feel. And I'll tell you, we really thought, because we have a good mixture on our board of restaurant people, retailers and office people. And we just think the Creek Walk's a really great idea because it brings a different element to Temecula, Old Town. So you have your restaurants, you have your retailers, the shoppers, but you have what John said, the recreational people who may want to have dinner, but then take a walk, or who just want to come down to Old Town and take a walk. And instead of walking down Main, they get this whole area that they can do this big circle and really enjoy what we have to offer down in Old Town Temecula. So I think our merchants are excited about it. We'll start walking and just giving people, what do you think of this? And usually they're very open to their opinions. So we definitely hear the truth out of them. So I think it's been good, but we've got a great board that represents almost every facet of Old Town Temecula. So
thanks for listening in, and we hope you have a Creek Walk here sometime soon.
Can I say that this board has been talking about this exact concept for years? I mean, years. I've been on the board 25 years. We've been talking about this so long. We've been waiting for you to show up, waiting for you to come and do this thing for us. I mean, so we totally anticipate or totally agree or dedicate ourselves or whatever to the effort, because that's what.
That's good.
Other than the conceptuals that you have here, John, do you have point to point? Are you looking at doing arch to arch, or are you doing it from
just
Santiago?
No, arch to arch is from a Visit Temecula standpoint. That's what we could conceptualize. I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but I personally, there's a couple places where you can't do it, but I've walked along that little route right there, you know, along the river. And it would make a perfect little continuation or expansion of the Old Town experience.
Yeah, Chairman Jackson, if you'd like, I can give you an update on where we are with the Corps of Engineers and the flood control district on potentially being able to open that.
Okay, I have one more
Back
question in
there.
regards to, does your team put a preliminary budget, or have you guys any numbers that you've thought of or might be thinking of?
Visit Temecula Valley is a nonprofit organization that has a very specific lane that in which we can spend our money. One of the ways we can spend our money, and if you look at the ultimate interchange, the ultimate interchange is not going to be done like every other Southern California interchange. There's actually a plan that was put together to create more of a Temecula feel, that it was welcoming to the visitor and a source of civic pride. And what Temecula Valley did was spearheaded and then contributed to 5 different organizations, including the city of Temecula, the Pachanga Band, the Chamber of Commerce, I think was Wine Growers Association involved. There was 5 different organizations that chipped in and commissioned essentially a study and a plan with people that are much smarter than us that do this sort of thing all the time, to create that beautification plan that could be then over time, as the different off ramps are improved or changed, it could be implemented. What we can spend our money on is not infrastructure processes, but we can spend our money on that sort of thing where we're limited to marketing, and we can stretch that into things that promote Temecula through beautification, because it's almost like signage or so the short answer on the Old Town Creek is we can't spend money on putting in pavers, but we can spend money on the study and the process of getting to the point that says this is the plan that we're going to implement.
Sir?
So, as you know, the Army Corps of Engineers project to do the improvements of the creek itself, south of Rancho California, was what looks like was completed over a year ago now. And they installed the fence, the black fence right at the top of the creek bank. And then there's a temporary fence that's installed at the property line between the private properties in Old Town and then the property that's actually owned by the Riverside County Flood Control District. All of the creek, the landscaping, the trail and everything is owned by Riverside County Flood Control District. So they're very close to having the landscape maintenance. So they had a contractor that maintained the landscaping for a year after it was put in, and that's just about up now. And then once that's up, the plan is that the city is going to take over the maintenance of the landscaping and the trail, the asphalt trail, under a license agreement from the flood control district. So we will be entering into a license agreement that says that the city will provide this maintenance and that it will be able to be open to the public. And when that is done, that temporary fence that's that property line, that'll be removed. So it'll be open, from those businesses and properties along Front Street over and onto that creek path. So we're probably, I would say, 30 to 60 days away from that being completed and being able to actually open it to the public. And then following that, the city council did authorize us to purchase lighting. So we've purchased light poles to put in along the trail between First Street and up to just past Starbucks, kind of where the trail comes back to the Front Street, connection there. So we're going to install overhead lighting, not super high, but I think they're 12 feet high poles with solar powered lights, because there was no electrical put in, unfortunately, along the trail there. So we're putting in solar powered lights so that there will be some nighttime light, so that it'll be a safe environment. And then we'll be able to open to the public. So, and hopefully, once that's all done and businesses are wanting to move forward with, engaging on that side of the properties and towards the creek, then that process can get started. But we're definitely planning by the end of the calendar year that the trail will be taken over and under maintenance of the city, open to the public, and then we'll have the lighting hopefully put in by the end of the year. So that is what I know about Marietta Creek.
That's good. Excellent.
Does, I guess that would be a future discussion with Public Works and City Council members to talk about if we wanted to implement the dams, wouldn't we have to go to Riverside County?
Most certainly. Yeah,
to install
because,
those- install at least 2 dams.
yeah,
one
if
at
there
the
were to
top,
be
one at the
any,
bottom.
attempt to try to control the water in the creek, we would definitely have to coordinate that with flood control, and I would say probably at this point, even Army Corps. Because they, that overall Marietta Creek project is technically a federally authorized project. And the Corps has been the lead on it, flood control is the owner and the local sponsor. And then the city of Temecula and the city of Marietta are the partners with flood control on that overall project.
Other than San Luis Obispo, is there any other city or any other area that has something similar to what we're proposing?
And this is probably similar, and I don't know a lot of the specifics, but I know there is a plan underway to try to activate Escondido Creek that runs right through the middle of downtown Escondido. And I think it sounds like it's something similar to what you heard the presentation on here. So that's something that we could do, is reach out to them in Escondido and see what their plans are for. And I think they just got a grant to implement that part of that program there. So we can reach out to them and, see what their plans are and potentially where they're funding, where this grant funding is coming from.
What we would offer up if there was interest is to be part of a task force that really looked at all the specific issues. There's a lot of hurdles and limitations. There's some pathways that may be more practical than others. But we would be more than willing to do that from Visit Temecula Valley standpoint. And also it would require our board approval, but also the idea that we would have the ability to invest in some of the planning process financially. I would put that forward as a very highly likely scenario. And I'm guessing that Old Town Association would want to be involved with that, or be willing to be involved with that too, and put whatever muscle. There's probably a few other organizations that would jump in, just because there's a lot of positive interest in this concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would be extremely useful to find out if the water flow would support something like that, what the environmental impact would be of, we could keep water moving through, or we have stagnant
The
water,
biggest
all that.
challenge on that is, that is a flood control channel.
Exactly,
So it would need to
exactly.
be made, it needs to accommodate the
Yes,
flooding
Yep.
conveyance.
it needs
So
to allow
we
a certain
would
amount to come
definitely have
out,
to
go in.
make sure we're, and like you say, coordinate that with flood control. And
But that whole intent right now, that creek is also a perks.
Mhm.
So any water that stands there for a long period of time, just
They actually are
Disappeared.
going to be, that kind of the last part of the construction of the creek is to remove the silt that is built up over the last, 10 years since the phase 1 project was done further downstream. So matter of fact, that'll be starting like within the next week or so. They'll be coming in there with excavators and removing quite a bit of silt that's built up in the bottom of the channel there over the next 30 to 60 days.
and it goes all the way down to 79.
That removal, they came in and took the vegetation out.
Right.
Last, what was it, I guess fall, kind of late fall, winter. And then they're coming now after the nesting season is over here shortly, and they're gonna actually take out the silt.
So I had a question for. So this is obviously would be a fairly complex project with phases associated with it. Do you think that the water would be required before businesses would want to make changes? Or if it was in its current state and some of these other things were done, some of the artsy sort of stuff, do you think that would be enough to have, or do we need to have this all set up before it becomes business viable? Just off the top of your head.
I think that it would be enough to show intent and
Okay.
moving forward. I think as we do things back there, I know on the concept, they showed like an art exhibit, things like
Yes.
that. I think as we start bringing things back there, I think you'll get the business go, oh, hey, we should do this, and possibly, in my mind, what this was brought up is more pop-ups right now.
Yes.
If a business wanted to go out there, it'd be a pop-up dinner night, it would be a pop-up something versus anything permanent quite yet.
There's also, there's also the opportunity for a lot of the festival stuff that happens to translocate
Absolutely.
that area, frees up the main drive. So,
Absolutely, or creating new festivals back
Yes,
there.
exactly.
I agree. I agree.
I think once we get that temporary fence down and actually just get it open to the public, you'll really be able to see what the
They'll have it
opportunities
after,
are.
they'll build up after.
Absolutely.
Is there a temporary fence on the west side of it as well?
Yes,
So that's coming down as also?
yeah, and the west side, it's not a paved trail, it's a DG trail,
Right.
but that'll be open to the public as well. So both sides will be open to the public and under that maintenance of the city.
Okay, where's the crossover north? Is there a crossover? So if somebody was riding their bike north, and they decided to cross over and come back?
You got Main, Rancho Cal and Main Street. Those are the only two ways to get across.
Anybody else?
Just to, reiterate what Albert said, I mean, this is something that we talk about a lot. And it just feels, and I think it's for a lot of people, it feels like it's just something that you need to start doing. It's long overdue. And it's something we can start moving on. Just have such a fantastic opportunity to take something that's already up there, right? So that's a partnership.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? Okay. Number 3, presentation of parking space availability signs.
That is me, and I'm going to put up the graphics that were part of your.
Putting that up. Thank you very much for your time, folks. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, John.
Thank you.
very
Thank you. Talk soon.
Minimize it. No, no. Yeah. No, it's kind of. Okay. Am I good to go?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure if the board heard the presentation that was given to the city council in August, just as an update to the parking issues and what the city's been doing on parking. Luke Watson, I gave that presentation of looking for potentially some temporary parking spots, spaces. We had some discussion with the owner of the property just south of the roadway in, the vacant lot there. Unfortunately, they're in escrow to sell that property, and there actually was a development proposal for that property now, but we were hoping to be able to do a temporary lease of that property and be able to utilize that for public parking. Even and certainly prior to the future development, that's still in the very conceptual stage. So if the new owner of that property is willing, we would potentially be able to do a temporary lease with the new owner to be able to open that up. We've got a layout for parking and kind of have a plan to make that a public parking lot for the temporary period of time before it's actually developed. But that's still tentative at this point. The other direction we got was to move forward with this installation of these digital parking signs on the city-owned lots. the Stampede, or what we're now calling Second Street lot, and then the Sixth Street lot, similar to the digital signs that were installed at the parking structure, the City Hall parking structure. So on the screen here, you can see the two locations at Stampede and Sixth Street. And then what's shown in blue there are what we're calling 3-level signs that'll be installed at the north and south end of Front Street. And I've got some other pictures of those here for you as well. So this is the Sixth Street lot. And you can see the signs would be installed at the 2 driveway entrances. So the blue sign with the P, and then the digital number would be the number of available spaces. So the way that the space count is kept is by some pads that are installed on the entry and exits to the driveways. And you can see those pads here, what those would look like. And they would just keep track of cars coming in and going out. And then the number would be adjusted for the currently number of available spaces. And there's the other driveway at Sixth Street. The number of spaces, and as with the signs at the Civic Center, the signs have communication and communicate with the cloud. So the number of spaces is sent to the cloud, and then the 3-level signs at the both ends of Front Street will have the number of available spaces at all 3 of those locations on an ongoing basis as well. So you'll see that in just a minute here. So this is the Stampede lot. And again, the 2 signs at the driveway entrances with the number of spaces available at any given time. And then the pads at the parking at the driveway entrances to that lot. Are those shots here? These are just some samples from the vendor that we're purchasing these signs from. The company is called Parking Logics, and some samples of signs that they've installed at other locations with the number of available spaces at those locations. So it's a very simple system. It's just like I said, the pads track the vehicles coming in and out, and then the signs are updated with the number of spaces at all locations. So those are the signs at the 2 entrances, and then the signs at the north and south end. So that's the sign that will be at the north end prior to Moreno. So as you're coming in, and the direction will be to make a left turn to get onto Moreno, and then Mercedes to get to the Civic Center, go straight to Sixth Street, straight to Second Street at the south end, and then those numbers will be updated on a real-time basis for the number of available spaces at each one of those locations. And then I've got the one for the south end here. Okay, so that's the one that will be at the south end. So that'll be between First Street and the Arch at the south end. So, and then again, those signs will be updated with the number of spaces on an ongoing basis. And then the other location where that number of spaces available will be on our app. So on the city app, right now we've got the number for the spaces at the Civic Center and the parking structure that's on that app. And then we'll update that app so it'll have all 3 of those in number of spaces. So when people are coming into Old Town, they'll be able to use the app to know where there's open spaces. They'll see the signs as they come in on Front Street. And when they get to the parking lots themselves, they'll see a sign that has how many spaces are available in each one of the lots. So that's the plan. And we're actually in the process of ordering. We actually already ordered the signs. 6 to 8 weeks is what we expect to have them delivered, and then we'll be installing them. So again, it would be by the end of the year here, we should have all those installed.
Look for your pictures like there's a solar power. option,
The, yeah,
so you
the
can run power.
individual signs at each of the lots,
Mhm.
solar powered. The 3-level ones at the north end, those take 120
Yeah.
power. So we've got power at the arch for the
Yes,
lights.
yeah.
So we'll be able to run power over to them.
Keep the costs
For those.
down. by having to run
Yeah.
electric. That's-
So that's the conclusion of the presentation.
Any comments?
It's like we're moving into Jetsons territory.
It's great.
We don't have any comments from anybody else? Okay. Okay, next one is the planning application number PA 21-0619, modification application to allow architectural and site plan revisions to be conducted on an existing commercial site located at 41915 3rd Street. Staff report from Eric Jones.
PA 21-0619. Modification application to allow architectural and site plan revisions on existing commercial site. The project is generally located on the northwest corner of Mercedes 3rd Street. The red box there you see before you. It is a former restaurant structure that's literally directly across the street. First, we'll take a look at some of the site revisions they're proposing. It's important to note that this structure, this whole site was developed well before the current specific plan was put into place. So it's considered existing legal non-conforming. It's a 1-story structure with a patio area. The applicant is proposing some pedestrian ingress and egress off of 3rd Street and Mercedes Street. There's also that large patio structure out there, a patio area. They're going to enhance that area with a stone fireplace. They're also revising the fencing along both frontages, and we'll talk a little more about that fencing in just a moment. And then the existing alley that's in the back, that'll be where the trash is continued to be serviced. There's going to be sidewalk improvements associated with this project. We wanted to take a moment to more specifically discuss it for this particular project. That is, at the end of the day, ultimately, sidewalk improvements will be constructed per the Old Town specific plan standards. However, these plans, the sidewalks were originally supposed to be part and work in conjunction with another development along 3rd Street. The timing for that one is not as certain at this moment. So right now, staff is determining whether or not the project and the sidewalks will be built to the specific plan standards right now, or will we have more of an interim solution in its place for the time being? We have a member of Public Works here to speak more to that after the presentation if you have specific questions on that. Take a look at the proposed site here. See the site, we have Mercedes Street, we have 3rd Street. Here would be the main entrance off of 3rd Street. Secondary access here off of Mercedes. And this right here is where that stone fireplace is proposed, in this general area of the patio. And then here's the rear where the alley is, where the trash will be picked up. Take a look at some of the architecture now. So as I mentioned before, the project was constructed well before the advent of the current specific plan. So it doesn't really fit any of the architectural styles that are in the SP.
Has all of it been built before the plan?
The structure was,
It's
yes.
some post.
The structure was the
The
large,
canopy stuff comes after.
the
plan,
shark-
correct?
correct. The shade structure came in a little bit after. So it more closely resembles the Western Frontier architectural style if you're going to pick any of the styles in the SP. That style allows for wood facades, lots of glazing, decorative columns, things of that nature. Primarily, the project is going to have, as I mentioned, they're going to make some revisions to the entrances off of 3rd Street and Mercedes. They're going to be using a vintage wood for siding. They're also gonna fix the shade structure. Right now, as you all know, they're just steel posts into the ground. They're gonna put wood cladding around and it's gonna match the building. So they're gonna try to take that shade structure and tie it all into the building. They're also gonna take the fabric that's on the shade structure, on a portion of it, and they're going to continue the corrugated metal, which is on a portion of the shade structure already. So it all kind of tie together. Going from the elevations here, this would be the north along Mercedes Street. Here we have the west on the top, which is the alley. And then this would be if you're looking straight through past the shade structure on 3rd Street there on the bottom. They also provided a few photo sims for us. So again, here's the view off of 3rd Street of what they're proposing. You see the wood cladding now around the columns of the shade structure. It's trying to clean that up. They've removed the fabric awnings and that's corrugated, which is already on the top.
The front fence poles there will be the front line across will be the same as it is now.
I'm sorry, what now?
This line here is going to be the same as existing now.
Yeah, we'll talk about, when Public Works speaks, we'll be able to talk more about that. Some of the fencing and some of the frontage that's currently there is actually in the right of way. So when this project goes through, everything's gonna be pulled back onto their own property.
Well, how about the 10-foot build to line? I'm gonna pull something back. Why not pull all the way back where the specific plan says it ought to be?
Well, let me go back to here.
Okay.
So this exhibit shows the frontage improvements if they were to be done per the Old Town specific plan, and it also shows their property line. So right now that fencing currently is sitting out over here somewhere, running along this way, so it's clearly in the right of way. So when this project goes through, as you can see, everything's gonna be at least pulled back here behind their property line. The structure, they're not proposing any increase in square footage or anything like that, so we're not gonna make them, demo this whole portion, pull it back in. We're trying to work with.
I'm
what
talking
we've
about the
got.
area in front where
Yeah.
there is no structure.
Exactly. Right here, you can see everything's pulled back behind their property line. So it's gonna come out of the right of way now.
Did that resolve the issue?
Here we have the corner of 3rd Street, Mercedes Street. Mercedes Street. The back alley. So based on the information presented, staff request the Ultimate Review Board review and provide any comments you may have on the application and possibly recommend that the project be approved. With a presentation, I'm available for questions. The applicant is here as well if you'd like to speak with him.
Can we go back to the elevations, please,
Yeah.
and the plan? Denise, did we send this out earlier this week? The application to us? We had requested that all packages come up to us before the meeting, so we have it over the weekend to at least look at it.
Hard copies were not sent out, just the link to the website.
Yeah, I couldn't get it.
Could we please put it in the record that we would like to have hard copies presented to us or sent to us at least a week prior to our board meetings?
Yes.
So we have an opportunity to look at it in the hard copy form.
Sure.
Thank you. Because we're kind of caught flat-footed here, not knowing what to look at or what we're being presented to us. Plan section, please, or the plan. That one there. I guess this goes to Public Works.
Yes.
Is there any, I know there's a fire hydrant that needs to be relocated at the corner of 3rd and Mercedes. They also have some back in the alley. Are you going to request aid to do a alley improvement of some sort?
They'll do their halfway alley. Yes.
Halfway?
Yes.
Isn't that going to cause a problem?
I've been working with Omega Engineering, who's the civil engineer on the project, and there are some constraints here. Number one, it is a TI. This is not a subdivision, so therefore we don't have a nexus to actually require frontage improvements to the ultimate widths that you would normally see with a subdivision improvement agreement. However, working with Omega, there are certain items that they must do just because of the fact that they have the fence line, as Eric mentioned, on Mercedes Street. So that fence line will come back.
Right.
They will put in the sidewalk. At the bulb that you see there, that is an ultimate configuration, which is very difficult for them to attain because of the fact that these plans were superimposed from the CIP project that the city would be doing in conjunction with the opposite side Truax improvements at 3rd Street. Because they can't meet those, and by no fault of their own, because they can't meet that profile that would be proposed in the ultimate condition, they're gonna have to do a temporary condition, so it won't be a bulb like you see there. It'll turn at a radius. The fire hydrant that's there would have to be lowered to grade, not relocated. Because we can't do that until both sides of the street are completed. So what we're doing is asking them to do the minimum amount as possible to make their site work within the Old Town specific plan. And with regards to that, I'm only talking about the sidewalks.
Yes.
The frontage. So they do want to do the San Diego Buff along Mercedes Street and then along 3rd Street in order for them to attain their grades and have pedestrian traffic. But the bulb in its configuration there cannot be attained unless 3rd and the opposite side of 3rd at the Truax development would be constructed.
Yeah, because putting in that new curb and gutter and the sidewalk on 3rd Street is going to be
It's going to cause a drainage issue.
drainage issue.
Yes.
So would it be just beneficial just to do a kind of like a temporary asphalt sidewalk?
Well, there is, since Mercedes Street is at its ultimate grade.
I'm talking about on 3rd Street.
Oh, on 3rd. On 3rd, you could do asphalt, however, in talking with Borough Republic, and Stu can speak for them, I don't want to speak for them, but they do want to do something a little more decorative than asphalt.
I understand.
Because it's the entrance of the facility.
I'm just thinking that eventually part of 3rd Street or that whole north side of 3rd Street is going to have to be re-elevated to match the south side of 3rd Street.
It's such a small amount of concrete there that I think that that would be something the city would be fine with replacing if we did 3rd Street.
Okay.
Or I should not say if, when.
And then you're just going to taper the sidewalk
Correct,
down to existing grade
correct,
at the beauty shop?
correct, yes.
And they're going to pull their fence back to the property line, actually their elevation, please? Mercedes elevation?
Along Mercedes, the fence would be,
Yeah. There would be no fence there, it's just
It's a railing,
a railing system.
be railing with
tables and chairs right there.
patrons be able to look out, but the fence goes away. So that what you see there proposed is right along the right of way line.
It's the rating on property.
It's on property line, yes, correct.
The specific plan does call it 0 lot lines. Construction. The sidewalk still,
Isn't there a big tree right there on that?
it's going
Yeah,
away.
it'll be
That's going
removed.
away.
Tree will be removed.
Trees removed, and they're gonna put streetscape along Mercedes. And so,
Just so you're aware, there are other appurtenances besides the fire hydrant. You have the double detector check that's out there, and a few other items that really Borough Republic is not on the hook for, since it's a TI. So those will remain until the ultimate 3rd Street improvements.
We're gonna call this patio cover when it gets out into the 10-foot area, calling it a canopy then.
no, it's not out in the,
Well, it is, I mean, it's over the, it's supposed to have a 10-foot setback, and you can project under that 10-foot setback, a canopy or a marquee or
We can build up to the build line.
well, it's 8 foot, isn't it, all 8 foot? You can only do the canopy.
well, since it's an existing building,
Well, since it's an existing building, but that thing was built after the, so it's not, it's really an illegal, the way it is right now, it's illegal. But that's just probably
Non-compliance.
not terribly. Yeah, that's. But, yeah,
Can we go back to the plan, please?
that's just.
So canopy.
That's a patio cover,
Yeah.
but you can have projecting houses. you can't. So I guess you have to call that a portion of the patio cover. Can't. For the not the 2 feet, but 6 over.
I guess it would be nice to see how that canopy fits in the plan. I don't believe it's going over the sidewalks, correct?
No, it's not. It goes right up,
To the
right up
property?
to it. Yeah, right up to it.
You had like a side view in one of your projections.
Yeah, the rendering of Mercedes.
I'm not gonna really complain about it, just point out that it's another non-conformity, so.
And when's it set to be started? When's it set to be started? To start.
We're ready. Funding's in place.
Can we look at the
You have a anticipated completion date? 8 months.
8 months?
So that's gonna be the new patio cover thing or whatever.
Corrugate.
Yeah.
The stones for the fireplace.
Beechwood.
Well, all I can say is an improvement of what's there now.
Yeah, definitely.
The city and non-conforming buildings, what is gonna be your policy? Just let them all live the life?
What we try to do when projects come out, we try to do is we try to get as much conformance with the SP as we possibly can.
Yeah.
That's why with here, we're trying to make sure they're using at least materials that are consistent with the Western frontier style. In this particular case, we're making sure they hit that fence and they pull it back to their side of the property line. We try to pull as much as we can out of the SP. But when they're not asking for more square footage, they're not doing a complete tear down, it's kind of a case by case basis.
So just a remodel of an existing building.
Is there any thought of eventually losing the non-conforming buildings and replacing them with conforming buildings? I mean, that over time, you think that
What do you
eventually.
mean, forcing people to tear
No,
down?
just having it just kind of
When something comes up,
evolve into having something, because they're not useful anymore or whatever, maybe having buildings torn down and brought back. I mean, or if in fact you have a really old building that shouldn't be repaired, in effect, repairing it instead of tearing it down and replacing it with something that is conforming.
Well, I think that would, again, be on a case by case basis of the property owner determining if the project they want to do, does it make sense to knock it all the way down, or does it make sense to?
But if somebody wants to do a project on a building that really shouldn't have a project done on it, does the city have a right to say, you really shouldn't do this, let's get rid of the building and put something up that, because otherwise you're just continuing this stuff forever.
Yeah, from a legal standpoint, if someone has repairs that they need to do to keep their building safe for occupancy, we really can't stop that.
But if they want to do something to the building that doesn't require, that doesn't meet the specific plan, can't you in effect enforce the specific plan on property?
I'm not sure exactly what we're talking about, but let's say they wanted to do addition or some major changes, then it's written into the specific plan. When you get to a certain percentage of change, that you do have to meet all the requirements of the specific plan. That's already in the
That's in
document.
it, that's okay, that's probably.
Albert, you seem to be familiar with this building. What's your opinion of how the shading structure looks now? I mean, they're talking about upgrading it here, but how does it feel with how it fits? You know what I mean? In the
I never liked the shading structure when it was first built. They never asked us if we liked it, it was approved somehow without going through the board, and I don't know. At the time, it seemed strange to me that we didn't have some say on the thing. But it's there. I sure as heck don't think, I don't feel bad enough about it to make them take it down.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of this, that what's being proposed to us now. I say, that's fine, let's leave it. Leave it.
As you said, we didn't get to see this, so I would have driven by and taken.
Yeah, just walk right across the street and see it. Yeah, I mean, that's been the whole reason why we want this stuff early. Okay, so as far as the color schemes, I'm pretty okay with those. The natural wood look, the faux stone for the fireplace. The slate or no, your tile flooring. Is this your tile flooring?
Yes.
And the color. I would have liked to looked at the book to make sure that that color was in the specific plan. The tin roof. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So you're requesting us to approve it. So do we have a motion for approval on the board?
I move to this.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, so Barrel Republic's presentation has been approved by Member Blair and second by Member Dilbao. All in favor? Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. If I may, before we adjourn, we have board title placements that were omitted. We have a Director of Public Works report, if any. Okay, a board member report. Director of Community Development report.
Nothing to report.
Nothing. And lastly, code enforcement report before we adjourn.
I'll let you guys know that we are, on weekends, we're monitoring the occupancy of several places in Old Town that have overpassed and over occupancy. Also, there's some conditional use permit violations in Old Town working on construction without a permit. And we do have a couple business license violations.
What are the business violations?
Business license?
Yeah.
Just that they don't have a current business license.
Does anybody, or is that mainly for the task force for the homeless? I've noticed that there's a lot of homeless people living under the canopy or where the old root beer store was. They're sleeping on the porch when they go past there. It's 6:37 in the morning. Is that for the task force to be?
That'd be for the task force. I've been out there on Fridays and Saturdays quite late. I haven't noticed that they said they must be coming in very late at night.
Yeah. I've just
Or
noticed.
actually, not even at night, they're coming in the morning, like
Yeah.
2, 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
'Cause I haven't seen them and I've been roaming around Fridays and Saturdays, like I said, till 1:32 in the morning.
Is that it?
Are you ready to adjourn?
Yes. Any other comments from the board? So Announce the adjournment of this meeting today.
At 10:01 a.m.
At 10:01 a.m.
Thank you.